Welcome to Leading Questions, where we talk about the pivots, the leaps, and the messy middle of change. I'm your host, Susie Gitzig, a longtime social and content leader who's also in the middle of a big pivot myself. This season is about the people who are brave enough to bet on themselves, to leave comfort for possibility, to rebuild after disruption, and to find new meaning in what's next. Because sometimes the best way to lead is to start asking a better question. So today's guest is Jillian Kaplan. Jillian is a creative marketer, a community builder, and someone who is no stranger to transition. She's lived through many major life and career pivots and is here now to get into it all. We're going to talk about risk, identity, resilience, leadership, and some serious life change. So just a couple of minor things to cover.
Yeah, totally fine.
This morning. Okay, so let's jump in. Are you a person that likes change, or are you a person that would prefer things to stay the same?
Oh my goodness, that's a great question. I mean, I think I like change after I change, but the act of changing is really, really hard for me. Big changes. Little changes are really easy, but like big changes, I really have to think through before I make a decision.
That's sort of the way I am too. I always tell people I like things to stay the same, but I'm like you. Once I get on the other side, I'm like, oh, well, that worked great. It was just
Yeah.
sort of painful to get there. So you've had a lot of big changes. We're going to start with the most recent change and then work our way backwards. So I asked you what was a question you were asking yourself, and you said, what would happen if you left Dell? And if you're listening to this and you don't know Jillian and I, we were coworkers at Dell for a long time. So it's a company we both know a lot about, and Jillian had a really great role there. So when you started thinking about wanting to leave, what was that feeling like for you?
It was really hard. I mean, I loved what I did. I had a really great, like you said, role there. I loved the people that I worked with, and the friendships I built. I just had the best colleagues. So those were like my big hesitations. But what was really like propelling me forward was Dell had made a decision as a corporate entity to pivot away from having remote employees. And I have a disability that prevents me from sitting in an office for 8 hours a day, where I have to like get up and move. And my office is like half office. And then I have like a bunch of adaptive equipment over to my left that you can't see. And so I was able to stay remote, but I wasn't able to ever change jobs internally. Like there was no movement if you were remote, but it limited me career wise. And it wasn't like I was in the last 5 years of my career. I wish I could retire
Right.
in 5 years, but I cannot. And so that was like the kind of impetus for me to say, like, okay, I want to move away from this comfortable thing so I can continue to have growth. And for me, it wasn't about a promotion, but it was about like being able to laterally move, because that's the biggest benefit to working at a big company, right? Like you can stay in the company and you can move laterally, try new roles, work with new people. And that had been taken away from remote employees. And that was the struggle for me, right? Like I love what I do. I love the people I work with, but for my own self and for like loving myself too, I want that learning. I'm a learner, right? Like I want to learn new things all the time.
Yeah, you're definitely a learner, and it's that must have been a really big decision to grapple with. And I also love how you put it, because you announced that you were leaving, you announced why. It was very factual. It's tough as an individual when you look at decisions a company makes and maybe they don't fit with your lifestyle and what you need in your life, and yours is just a fact. This is what you need in your life, and going after what you needed, the other thing that you needed in your life, being able to learn and grow and change, that's really hard. And decisions always have impact, and sometimes the impact is that people like you have to look for other opportunities. It is taking the leap and taking a bet on yourself when things were fine and comfortable, and you were surrounded by great people and you did have cool projects and all of that was great, but it didn't work with what you saw for the next phase of your life.
I'm like a lifelong learner. Like I continue to go to school, I continue to take classes, I continue to try to think outside the box, and that's just incredibly important to me and where I get my energy from.
Was there a moment that you remember when you're like, I need to make a change?
When the policy came into play, I had actually like just taken a new role. So like I had time to learn and grow in that phase.
Yeah.
And then, it wasn't like an emergency for me. Like I wasn't unhappy in any way, shape, or form. I never saw myself leaving, right? Like I loved working there. I thought that would be it for me. The policies were different when I started. So it wasn't a moment, it was very gradual. I was like taking my time. And I remember during interviews, people were like, "You seem really happy there. Why are you leaving?" Right? It was like very factual. It was like, "These are the facts. This is why I'm looking." And people understood, but
Okay, so as you began considering this idea, were there any fears that came up for you?
tons.
What was that like? Like shaking up something where you've been for a long time, that's a big thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, I had lots of fears around people hating me, around me losing my friends. That was my child's biggest concern. She was like, "But mommy, what about all your friends at work? Are they still going to be your friends?" And I was like, "Oh man, I hope so."
What is the question?
"Are you going to make new friends?" I'm like, "Also, I hope so, right?" So I think it was like a fear of people disliking me, of being mad at me, of like not not feeling like I did my due diligence or gave it enough, right? Those were like my biggest fears. And I had never resigned from a job before. So I've worked at Verizon and Dell, and I got laid off from Verizon while I was on maternity leave. So I didn't
Yeah.
resign. So like I've only worked two places, right? I'm not someone that hops, right? I've been in the industry over 21 years now. Um, and so that was also a concern for me. Like, how am I going to
Yeah.
resign? Like, I remember feeling like sick about it physically. Like, how am I going to do this? And, the reality is like, they're completely fine without me, right? But like, I felt personally just like bad about it.
Will say, like being on the other side and not being Adele after a long time, Adele, a lot of your friends will stay, some will not.
Yeah.
Some are definitely friends that are like situationship friends, right? You're in the same class or you're doing the same thing. But the people that are genuinely your friends, like it's been a real joy to see like my Dell community rallying around me in ways that like they don't have to do that. But it shows you that friendships were real and that people are really in your corner. Let's go back to your first pivot. So if you don't know Jillian, this is a big pivot. And in this case a pivot was sort of like decided for you. You didn't really have a lot of decision in the matter. So why don't you walk the audience through like what your first pivot was and what did it mean in your life?
Yeah. A little over 9 years ago, I was hit by a car crossing a crosswalk at about 40 miles an hour. I had an emergency brain surgery to save my life. I live with a traumatic brain injury, so I remember nothing. So if you see me like taking copious notes on a call or looking around, I'm not distracted. I'm just trying to figure out what's going on so I don't forget later. And I shattered my pelvis, and they told me that I would never walk again. Hence my like need to have equipment so that I can get up and move my body. But I do walk again, which is amazing. And I live a very, I don't want to say normal, but like I live very similar to my life before crash, which is not the case for a lot of victims. And it definitely like changed my life and my entire perspective on everything and how important everything is and how
Mhm.
things can like change in an instant, right? So that, I mean, that has like completely affected who I am and what I talk about. And I love though, like working in the technology space, there's so much um, talk around like how to prevent crashes using, technology. Technology can help prevent human errors from happening. So that's been like a really cool part of my career as well. And like seeing all those changes for myself.
How was your life after the crash and what did it teach you about resilience or getting through difficult situations?
I mean, for a while, it was really everything was really hard, right? So I was like completely wheelchair bound for months. I lived in the hospital for a month. I had this really cool half shaved head for my brain surgery, which was, I should pull up some, I'll send you some of those pictures. They're pretty fun.
Oh
I
my
dyed
gosh.
like half my hair rainbow and the other half was shaved. I looked pretty badass.
That is amazing, actually.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yes.
You have to
Rock
have
the
fun
hair.
when you're like, I think like resilience wise, it just taught me that A, that I was like really lucky because I recognize that some people like don't have the same outcome that I do. And B, that it's possible to get back to life as you know it and that working really hard can help you get there. And I don't take any of that for granted. People always say to me, like, wow, like you remember everything. And I'm like, actually, I remember nothing, but I write everything down so that I don't forget everything. Right. I think that, I try to overcompensate a little bit sometimes, which can be hard and maybe like not great, but I'm also self-conscious. Like I get very self-conscious when people like say, well, I told you so. And I'm like,
Mm.
I'm, I have a brain injury, like, I'm sorry. But I think resilience wise, like, it's just taught me so much about how much we can do that we don't think, like, I never thought I would make it through that, right? Like, it was wild. And I'm very grateful. I was able to be part of a team here in Massachusetts that passed a law so that you can no longer hold your cell phone and drive. I had to testify like in front of Congress and the state Senate and meet with the governor and, relive my story over and over, which wasn't great, but the outcome has been great. So like I never thought I would pass a law, right? There's a lot of things that have come from it that, they said I would never have a baby. I had a baby like 13 months later, which is like totally insane. There's so many um awesome things that have come of it, and I've met some really great people, and I'm not like, "Oh, I'm so glad that happened to me. I did so many great things from it." That's not the
No.
case, but I took a crappy situation and was able to like build something really cool from it and learn a lot about myself and who I am and
Did you know how resilient you could be before
no,
Jillian is
like
shaking
I
your
didn't
head?
think I could, make it through that. It was horrible, right? But I came out on the other side and I had a lot of support, which was great. And it taught me a lot about myself and it makes me a lot more empathetic to other people too that, may be going through something. My disability is not visible. I don't like limp or walk with like any sort of assistive technology. You can no longer see the scar on my head. I have hair that covers it now. And I had a weave for a while. That was a whole process. But I don't anymore. Obviously, for 9 years, my hair has grown. But it makes you a lot more empathetic to realize there's like a lot of invisible disability out there. And you
Absolutely.
can't just assume that, you know, everyone has it all together all the time.
No, honestly, like as a person who has also gone through a lot and talks a lot about like mental health and invisible disabilities, it's so important to have that conversation. And I think when you bring it up every year and you talk about it to like your LinkedIn community, and there's still some people that don't know this is your story, like it's so important for people to remember that like what you see on a Zoom window or whatever is not the full 360 picture of what someone's going through every day. It's just the like polished corporate version in some cases. And to have that empathy, like in my family, we were in a very bad car accident when we were younger, and my sibling had a TBI. They were in the hospital for over a month and forgot everything and had to relearn everything. And this was so long ago that there were so many things that were not in place. There was so little help for them, and they got through a lot and have been incredibly resilient in their life. But that's always the story that I think about and tell. And I was only like 9, but it definitely is a moment, even at that young age, that taught us about resilience. And
Yeah, for sure.
so let's move on to your next pivot. So you mentioned Verizon. It sounded like you were on maternity leave, you were laid off, it was unexpected. What did you do then?
I cried a lot. For those of you who have had babies in the audience, your hormones are already like all over the place. It was really hard for me. I remember telling my husband we were going to have to like live in a box and he was like, "We're not going to live in a box. It's going to be okay." But it was really hard, right? And I had been there 14 years, it just felt like really hard timing for me and after I like pulled myself up, I started applying places and interviewing, and obviously I hadn't done that in a very long time.
Oh, yeah.
But I will say it ended me at Dell, and Dell was an amazing place to come to after like a terrible incident like that. And I was given like an opportunity that I didn't check every box on paper on my resume for the job, but I was able to come in and learn and grow. And I had, before like the changes happened, I was able to have three different jobs. In the moment, again, it was like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. And it ended up being like one of the best things that had ever happened to me, right? Like, but it felt horrible. Like in that moment, you're like, oh my God, why is this happening? Like, how could this be happening? And then it happens and you're like, this is okay. And it was hard. Like I was out for 6 months. I had a newborn and, I'd already committed to send her to daycare, but I ended up being able to like cut back days. So the other thing was I got a lot of extra time with her that I never, like I was able to send her 2 days so I could like interview and apply, but I was home with her 3 days, which time I would never have gotten before. Right. So that's also looking back like a gift that I never could have gotten originally. So you try to look on like the good side of things, but it was
Yeah.
certainly hard in the moment. That was like it felt terrible, and it was like the fact that I was on maternity leave was like,
There's two thoughts I have to that. One is someday I'm super interested in maybe starting a consulting company about how to do better layoffs and how to lay people off like human beings. And one of the things on that list would be like, don't lay people off during maternity leave. That is incredibly cruel and unnecessary. And there's ways to be a human and still make difficult business decisions.
sure,
So that's a side gig that I may create someday.
you should do
But
that.
also for like the purposes of this podcast, like it's the feeling that you're in the middle of something that you have no idea how to tackle. It feels overwhelming. You have no idea how you're going to get out of it. And almost always, and I'm knocking on wood and telling myself too, like the other side is better. Like it's just getting through the period of suck that minimizes it, of course. But as someone who's in it right now, like this period will not be forever. There will be another side to this period, and that period will be completely different. And it's just being willing to muddle through and keep the resilience as much as you can, and keep the optimism that like it won't always be this. And that is really hard to do when you're in it, but is like the impetus for having all these conversations, because the suck hopefully and usually does not last forever.
Yep, correct. It won't for all the people out there, all the suck, whether you're going through
Yeah,
something physical or mental or a layoff or something with your family. It's not going to last forever, but it's really hard in the moment. You have to make hard decisions, and the other side is usually something that you can take a deep breath and be like, okay, I made it through that. And you find out how resilient you are. I found out how resilient I was in that moment too, right? Like, and that all happened within like 14 months. I had the crash, I had the baby, I got laid off, right? Like it
oh my
was like
god,
just not a great year and a half. Since then, like it's really been good. And there's going to be more periods of suck that come. I know that. But right now, you got to enjoy like when things are less suck, I guess, less sucky.
absolutely. Like when things are just normal and moving along, like I always try to remind myself to like stop and be like, wow, what things I have to be grateful for in my life. Like even this period, I'm like, wow, and I have my house and I'm on my husband's health insurance. That is
Yeah.
like wild. Like let's celebrate that. And like the sun is shining and I can make art, like even in times that are hard, there's moments of joy. And when things are decent and normal, there's so many moments of joy, and we can't forget to notice those things around us, and often it's easy to.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you're on the other side of the latest pivot. How are you feeling about finding a new position and starting a new journey?
Yeah, it was actually like not an easy decision, and I had a really hard time deciding what I was gonna do. I was looking for a long time, and I ended up with 2 offers coming in around the same time, which I'm incredibly grateful for. And one offer was from an amazing another big tech company, very similar to the job I had, in product marketing, different product, different company. And I was really excited about it because I was excited about, like, the company and what they were doing. And the job I ended up taking was totally different than what I was doing before. Much, much smaller company, very late stage startup. And I'm their first product or marketing hire. So, like, I'm building everything, right? Like, someone said to me, like, "Aren't you worried about, like, ruffling feathers and changing a bunch of stuff?" I'm like, "There's nothing to change. Like, it's all from the beginning, right?" I mean, it was a little bit uncomfortable because it's new company, new product, but, like, a very comfortable job into, like, getting, like, really uncomfortable and doing something I'd never done before. I've never worked at a small company. I've never worked at a startup. I've never had total control over building something from the
Mhm.
ground up. And it just felt like this was a time and an opportunity that I really shouldn't pass up. I also had a really hard time telling the other company no. And I hate disappointing people, same as, like, I hated giving my resignation. And one of my leaders said to me, like, "This is something you're just gonna have to get over. Like, you're gonna have to get better at, like, making these tough
Mm,
decisions and, like, not looking back." And I was like, I don't actually think that's gonna happen. Who I am as a person and, like, the empathy that I have and the feelings that I have are not gonna change. Like, sorry,
no,
like, you can say to me, like, "Oh, you gotta get better at this," but no, that's not something I have to get better at, and it's not something I'm willing to get better at. Like, this
I
is
don't know.
who I am. It was just for me, it was just like, I'm a technology nerd. Like, my background is engineering, and the technology at this company was, like, so exciting and, like, really cutting edge. And I was like, if someone asks who my dream job is, my dream job is to be, like, the CMO of, like, a CTO, like an office of the CTO organization. Like,
Ooh,
I want to message
okay.
out the nerdiest, most cutting edge stuff. And this was that for me. I mean, it's not my title, right? But, like, this is what I'm getting to do.
You're taking a big bet on yourself, knowing like who you are, what you're good at, what you can bring to a company, and you're taking a leap and you're going to get to learn a lot and try a lot. But like to put it in a beautiful bow, like you've bet on yourself a lot throughout the course of your career and you've gone through difficult times and you've come out stronger. And as a builder, as someone who in my interviews is like, just let me fix it, let me build it, let me start over. As builders, like that's the biggest joy is just to have a playground and have people that know what you can do and give you space to do it.
Yeah, yeah, it's been very interesting, very exciting, and, we'll see where it ends up, but, I think there's, like, a really cool future for sure.
Let's do a quick lightning round. What is a risk in your life that you're glad that you took that is not one of the ones that you've mentioned here so far?
Oh, okay, I bought a horse about a year ago. Yes, and I'm an equestrian. I've been equestrian my whole life. I used to be very good. Now I'm extremely mediocre. I'm kind of old and washed up, but I've ridden my whole life. I say it's cheaper than therapy for me.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's actually true, but that's what I tell myself. And this horse who was like an Amish auction reject, like, he was thrown away. I think he didn't get big enough for them. The Amish like really big horses to pull their carts. And he was just like so sweet. And but he wouldn't come to me. He was terrified. He only came to my daughter because I don't know, he was scared of adults. So she would have to like go get him and then I would be able to do whatever. But I felt like it was a huge risk. I was like, this is nuts. Like, this is crazy. This is a big commitment. But he's amazing. I do dressage and eventing with him. He's won every single dressage show I put him in this year. He's like grand champion of the whole series. We're going to this like big equine event that he got accepted into. There's like thousands of people that apply. There are 25 horses that they choose. And I'm mediocre. So let's be clear that it's the horse and not me. But he's a badass. He's winning
Oh my
against these
God.
like, six-figure horses and he's like came out of the auction and where no one wanted him.
Oh my gosh, he's had a big pivot. He needs to
Yeah.
come on the podcast. Like, what a different outlook on life he has now. I know nothing about horses, but
He behaves because he's like, these people feed me and they love me, and so I'm just gonna be my very best self. He's the best.
what's his name?
Ranger. Stupid name. It's what he came with,
Ranger.
but it is what it is.
Look,
So
Ranger, the prize-winning horse. I love
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Next question for you. Is there a failure in your life that you look back and you celebrate? A failure that turned into something good?
I mean, so many failures that turned into good things. When I was passing this state bill, like we had so many failures in getting it through legislation, right? And like so many things that didn't work. And that's why it took like years and years to get it through. I would say like those were really big failures for me.
Good example.
I've had, the problem, I think the mistake people make is they fail once and they're like, I'm done. But the reality is, it's just the beginning. I mean, think about like every interview you have that you don't get the job. Like if you just gave up, like, oh, I didn't get that job. So clearly I'm not going to get any job. You've got to like look at failures in a different light.
I was talking to someone about politics the other day, and they said that in many cases, our generation wants an immediate response to what they do. So if we want to pass a bill, we rally for it, and then the bill passes, and then we check it off, right? But that isn't a lot of times how politics works, or how bills work, or how the political system works. And the fact that you had this bill that clearly is common sense and would save lives, and for whatever reason, it didn't pass until it did, and that you said, no, this is incredibly important. We're going to keep going after what could be seen as a failure or a setback. Like, and then you got there. Like, I know all these things sound so kitschy, but when you're in it, you have to make the decision. Like, do I just give this up, or do I say, no, this is incredibly important. I am going to take this failure setback, and then I'm going to literally pick myself up and try again.
Think I've ever just like given up completely. Like I pivot or change, but like I think that like my mindset is not such that like I give up
No, you haven't.
completely. One of my previous bosses used to say I was sufficiently annoying, right? Like I annoyed enough to get shit done, but wasn't like overly annoying. I was like, okay, that's an interesting compliment, I think.
I think it is. Put in some interesting words, but
Yeah.
I resonate with that. I, as someone who, like, if I know there's a path that's the right path, on a human level, usually, I keep going on the path, until like a brick wall comes down, because the first no isn't often the no.
Nope.
It's just a slight pivot along the path to getting where you need to get to. And as people who I think are high on the resilience scale, like knowing that shouldn't be taken for granted. Like our ability to pick ourselves up and keep going is something that we should celebrate and be thankful for, because it doesn't come with the original model all the time.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, is there a book, quote, song, or mantra? Is there something that like represents you or keeps you motivated?
I'm obsessed with the book Grit, IT. I highly recommend it. My first leader gifted it to like the whole team. I felt very connected to it because I think of myself, because I have a brain injury, especially like I'm not the smartest person in the room. I'm not the sharpest person in the room. Sometimes I like forget what I did 5 seconds ago. But the book talks about like how, resilience and grit like can matter so much and can really, create high performers. Like you don't have to be the smartest to be a high performer. And it resonated with me because I felt like all kind of the other business books I've read are all about like being smart and knowing the most. I'm sure they're not all like that, but it was like for me, that's what I had read in the past. And it just felt like, oh my God, this lady understands me. Like I'm super gritty, like I'm super figure it out. What we just talked about, like,
Mhm.
okay, you said no, but like I'm going to figure it out. Right. And I think like I surprise people a lot with things that I do because I am so gritty, right? Like I took an adjunct professor role this year. People are like, how did you get that? I'm like, I don't I mean, I do know, but like I wanted that. So I like went for it. Right. And I got a lot of no's and I ended up in a great role for me. So yeah, grit. Highly recommended. Yep.
Okay, so we're gonna wrap up. And so Jillian, thank you for sharing your story. It's such an interesting one. It had so many ups and downs, but then ups again. And I think for our audience, it'll remind them that like often the ground is shaking, but that you can get on the other side and remember where you stand and root yourself back to the earth. And thank you for your courage and your clarity. And if you're listening and you're wondering what would happen if you left something or you're in the middle of something and you can't see over the hill and you can't see what's coming next, hopefully Jillian's story gives you a little bit of motivation and support to see that often the next step is a step that you need to take to get where you need to go. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone who's navigating their own pivot and subscribe for more conversations about risk, reinvention, and resiliency. I'm Susie Gitzig, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jillian.